What's up? I'm Jared Harris, and you're listening to episode 40 of Beats by Jer. Today, we're talking about a moment that lasted a mere 13 minutes and 25 seconds. A moment that was witnessed live by 133.5 million people and has since been viewed by, at the time of writing, another 65 million people in just the week since its upload to YouTube. Today, I'll be talking about a moment that has captivated the world since last week, earning unprecedented amounts of both praise and controversy, which alone demonstrates how momentous of a moment this was. Today, I'm discussing the second most watched televised broadcast in human history, second only to the moon landing: Kendrick Lamar's historic Super Bowl halftime performance. The Super Bowl halftime spot is a coveted opportunity, often reserved for some of the greatest cultural defining artists and hottest fads of the day alike. At least that's how it's been since 1999, when the halftime show was headlined by Stevie Wonder, Gloria Estefan, and Big Bad Voodoo Daddy. Before that, the history of the halftime show is a curation of oddities that are simply perplexing, that included a ton of marching bands performing behind and or alongside an absolute sideshow of American curation. I'm talking about Elvis impersonators, Miss America pageant winners on fiddle, quote-unquote various Caribbean bands, magicians, singers who doubled as Christian activists against gay rights, and even Mouseketeers. The first noteworthy artist to perform at the Super Bowl was Ella Fitzgerald in 1972, but that was just for a single song alongside an assortment of miscellaneous entertainment. Chubby Checker and the Rockettes would follow in 1988, and New Kids on the Block in 91, both of which saw the artist performing with marching bands and more misc. The idea of a solo spectacle of a halftime show, a show that would define the course of the platform for the future, came with Michael Jackson's performance in 1993. Still, this would not become a consistent norm until 99, almost as though the NFL determined it was in their best interest to put on a show people would actually want to see. Since then, the likes of Aerosmith, Paul McCartney, Janet Jackson, the Rolling Stones, Tom Petty, Springsteen, Beyonce, and of course Prince have gone on to take the stage. In the last quarter of a century, the halftime show has become a must-see event that draws millions of people annually who otherwise would likely never watch the Super Bowl, making it truly a make-or-break moment that can result in a significant boost to an artist's career through massively inflated streaming numbers, sold-out tours, and being among one of the most coveted and exclusive clubs within pop culture. Throughout the last 2 decades, the artists who take the stage often check off 3 of 4 boxes. They are 20-plus years deep into their career, ensuring a sense of nostalgia to their presence. They have enjoyed a successful career of major hits on the radio and other media placements that often transcends genre and evokes a greater sense of familiarity among even casual listeners. They are currently active, either with a new release or tour on the horizon, demonstrating modern relevancy despite their legacy status. And they stand as a highly revered figure among their genre and respective culture in order to demonstrate their worth for occupying the largest stage in the world and the attention of millions. While this often pairs with the legacy aspect, it doesn't necessarily equate 100% of the time. In recent years, however, the NFL has been in a mild state of crisis for 2 reasons. The first was a slight decline in viewership following the 2015 season. In 2015, on average, any NFL game had an estimated 18 million viewers, making it one of the biggest years in franchise history. Those numbers, however, began to drop, reaching the lowest in recent memory, under 15 million per average game in 2017. While slight, this is more than enough of a dip to cause concern for a franchise that has spent the previous decade growing to an all-new peak. This brings us to the second issue: racism. Amid the Black Lives Matter movement emerged Colin Kaepernick, the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, who took a knee during the national anthem and was quoted saying, "I am not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color. To me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. There are bodies in the street and people getting paid leave and getting away with murder." In the years leading up to this moment, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Eric Harris Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, Alton Sterling, and Philando Castile made national and international headlines as noteworthy cases of people of color falling victim to excessive force used by police officers that resulted in death. For lack of a better word, murder. Following this statement, Kaepernick became a free agent and remained unsigned, something that is often attributed to political reasons. Amid slightly declining viewership, the NFL had a branding problem, one that they are actively working on still today. The NFL appeared, as an institution, racist. Between this and fears that a younger generation will have significantly less interest in the rituals of Football Sunday, the NFL had to pivot, which saw them strike a deal with Jay-Z's Rock Nation, in which Jay-Z and company have taken the lead on selecting performers for games, including the Super Bowl, and are bringing attention to social justice issues to the league. As a result, this led to halftime performances from Shakira and Jennifer Lopez in 2020, The Weeknd in 2021, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, and Kendrick Lamar in 2022, Rihanna in 2023, and Usher in 2024. By taking a more contemporary approach away from the legacy rock acts that dominated the stage throughout the 2000s, the NFL has made a strong case for securing viewership, particularly the young, women, and people of color. The franchise has almost reached the average game viewership peaks of 2015. In due time, this will come back up. This takes us to Kendrick Lamar. This is not an episode where I will go in depth on his feud with Drake. For a track-by-track, sometimes even line-for-line analysis of the beef, along with an analysis of the role that beefs have within the genre of hip-hop, check out episode 24. Furthermore, this is not an episode that will explore the subversive meaning and culturally redefining framework of his 2024 surprise album, GNX. You can hear that on episode 37. Consider today's conversation an epilogue that examines a historic and unprecedented run that kicked off last March that saw Kendrick release some of his biggest songs and a massive surprise album, arguably among the most successful surprise drops ever. In short, after going toe-to-toe with Drake, Kendrick pivoted towards the idea of unifying and healing the culture and community of both hip-hop and Black America. This was seen through his post-beef releases, including the Not Like Us music video, the pop-out concert, and the untitled, unofficially released track Watch the Party Die, culminating with one of the biggest albums of the year, GNX, an album which, along with Not Like Us, simultaneously occupied 13 of the Billboard Top 20 spots. Coming off of what was certainly one of the biggest years in his career, Kendrick swept the rap category at the Grammys for Not Like Us. GNX was released too late in the year for submission. The track won 5 of his 7 nominations, where he actually beat himself twice for Best Rap Song and Best Rap Performance on Like That, a song he was featured on, the song that kind of kicked off the beat. He was nominated for his role in those same categories where Not Like Us won. It would be impossible for him to have won all 7 of his nominations. In this case, he truly swept the category. Not Like Us won Best Music Video, Best Rap Song, Best Rap Performance, Song of the Year, and Record of the Year, the latter of which is often considered a songwriter's award, and contrary to what most assume with pop and rap music, Not Like Us was the only song nominated that could actually be attributed to a single songwriter, Kendrick Lamar Duckworth. Not only is Lauryn Hill the only other rapper in the genre to achieve 5 Grammys in a single night, this would mark the 3rd occasion that Kendrick has done so, bringing him to 22 Grammys among 57 nominations, and further making Not Like Us the most decorated rap song in the history of the genre. Following in the theme of GNX, his acceptance speech was spiritual, dedicating his work to LA, stating, "We will continue to restore this city," which on the surface is, of course, in relation to the LA fires, but for those following his career, but this last year in particular, this is a comment at the work needed to unite LA and the communities of color, healing from generations of institutionalized racism and bringing together rival gangs. All that being said, when Kendrick was announced as the Super Bowl headliner on September 8th, 2024, I was as surprised as I was excited. Going back to my own criteria, Kendrick really only checks off 2 of the 4 boxes. Yes, he was coming off the heights of Not Like Us, and GNX was on the way along with the Grand National Tour. And And in terms of relevancy, he is considered by many among the most innovative rappers of our time, having won a Pulitzer and receiving high praises from titans in the genre such as Dr. Dre, Snoop, Cube, Eminem, and so many others, ultimately denoting both an active moment in his career and an overwhelming sense of relevancy to the culture. But his career really only took off in 2012 with his breakthrough album, Good Kid, Mad City, falling short of that sort of 20-plus year mark that most artists are at when they perform at the Super Bowl. Furthermore, while incredibly successful and highly decorated, his body of work doesn't frequent the radio or other media sinks such as movies and TV, failing for him to truly reach a level of familiarity with those outside of hip-hop and a sense of nostalgia that echoes through multiple generations. Despite his massive success, and despite dominating pop culture and the discourse of the last year, there is a niche element to Kendrick Lamar that makes him an outlier pick for the Super Bowl. The lead up to the Super Bowl was full of further controversies and curiosities. The first controversy came in the selection of Kendrick over New Orleans' very own Lil Wayne. While the decision didn't rest on Kendrick, shade was certainly thrown his way for Roc Nation's decision to snub Wayne. This controversy turned to speculation that Wayne may actually appear as a surprise guest. However, recent concert footage of Wayne made this seem less than likely. With the announcement that SZA would join as a guest, who was an obvious pick given their frequent collaborations, most recently including Luther and Gloria, both from GNX, and of course their roots from Top Dog Entertainment. More speculation of guests range from the likes of Tyler, the Creator, to other legacy rappers in the past. With only SZA making an appearance, Kendrick was the first solo rapper to headline the Super Bowl. The final controversial element comes from Drake himself. After filing a pair of lawsuits against Universal Music Group, his own label, and Kendrick Lamar the Monday after GNX dropped, rumors spiraled that the NFL, in hopes to avoid their own lawsuits by association, may cut Kendrick. When this became apparent that they wouldn't, questions arose if the primarily conservative organization, a group known for heavy censorship and having strict rules of what performers can say and do on stage, would actually allow for Kendrick to perform Not Like Us. In addition to a whirlwind of controversies and speculations, in the week leading up to the Super Bowl, Kendrick was subject to 3 interviews, marking the first press cycle that he has participated in since GNX, and aside from his interview with SZA in fall 2024 in an issue of Harper's Bazaar, arguably his first series of interviews in years. Split into 2 short features, the first of which can be watched on the NFL's YouTube channel and the second on PG Lang's, Kendrick Lamar was joined by Timothée Chalamet to discuss their creative processes while driving around in a GNX. There isn't anything groundbreaking from either of these, but it does provide a very brief look at Kendrick's approach to making records, most notably his ideas of pinning the message of a record underneath a singular song. In the case of GNX, he did so with Man at the Garden, which, if you checked out my analysis of the album, I broke this track down, declaring it the most important and powerful moment on GNX. While these conversations stayed relatively surface level, it did come out around the same time that the two of them actually share the same stylus, which provides a clue as to the question the internet has been asking: what in the Hannah Montana were those jeans? Jokes aside, the pants were from French designer Celine, and they cost roughly $1,200 a pair and have completely sold out since Kendrick's Super Bowl performance, demonstrating on some level the impact and influence Kendrick holds over the culture. Following his conversations with Chalamet comes a third interview hosted by Apple Music's Nadeska and Ebro, and this is just an exceptional conversation. It's available on YouTube to watch, and it is incredible. In this, Kendrick goes deep into his artistry, giving a far greater peek behind the curtain as to his creative process, his artistic intentions, and his focus on maintaining his authenticity and integrity. I would consider this one of the greatest interviews I have ever seen, for the mere reason that rarely, if ever, do we get to hear from an artist while in the midst of such a creative peak. And rarely do we get such a genuine conversation with them. That alone makes this interview so special. It transcends rap and popular music. This is a conversation about art and remaining true to oneself. But it was also here that Kendrick noted that he planned to bring storytelling to the Super Bowl. With that, let's talk about the show itself. The performance opened as the camera panned up to Samuel L. Jackson, dressed as Uncle Sam. Fulfilling the role of an MC, Jackson introduces the show saying, "Salutations, it's your uncle, Sam. And this is the great American game." Jackson would return at key moments to provide a thematic flow to the narrative for Kendrick to perform against, almost as if the two were like pitted against each other. Kendrick started his set dressed primarily in blue and perched on the hood of a Buick Grand National, rapping the untitled and still unreleased song from the GNX trailer, a track that fans have since titled Bodies or Body for Body, stemming from the lyrics. As an unrealistically large swath of dancers emerge from the car, each adorned in either a blue, red, or white jumpsuit, Kendrick continues rapping. The stage stretches much of the length of the field, with the corners resembling the face of a PlayStation controller with an X, triangle, square, and circle. The length of the stage was divided into a grid formation with illuminated strips segmenting the stage into 9 rectangles, almost resembling a series of divided prison yards. Kendrick would go on to perform segments from 10 more tracks, 7 of which were released in 2024, with only Humble, DNA, and All the Stars to stand from his older bodies of work. From GNX, he would perform Squabble Up, Man at the Garden, Peekaboo, Luther, and TV Off, and from the Beef was Euphoria and Not Like Us. Additionally, SZA, who dressed entirely in red, joined Kendrick for Luther and All the Stars. But also, Serena Williams, yes, that Serena Williams, made an appearance as she was crip walking during Not Like Us. For those keeping score, that is 2 of Drake's exes making an appearance as Kendrick at this point desecrates his grave on live television for over 130 million people to witness. Now, as I say that, to be perfectly clear, this performance was not about the beef at all. Kendrick would perform a brief passage from Euphoria and the first half of Not Like Us, of course censoring out the pedophile line, but still saying A minor. The inclusion of these songs is natural. These were hits from the last year, and the latter of the two is, as of the week prior to the Super Bowl, the most decorated rap song in the genre. Of course he is going to play them. You can make the argument that by not performing a collection of hits that have built Kendrick's career, instead his focus of the halftime performance was to reflect on his achievements from the previous year alone, rather than celebrate his entire career. It's an interesting choice for building a show of this degree, certainly, but Euphoria and Not Like Us were central to this for sure. Now, despite not being about the feud, about being so much more than that, we cannot recap this show without highlighting one of the most memorable moments, a moment where Kendrick does in fact capitalize on this previous conflict. It's a moment that will forever be preserved. Kendrick, full grin, looks right into the camera as he walks through a clearing among the dancers to perfectly deliver the line from Not Like Us. "Say, Drake, I hear you like 'em young. You better not ever go to Cell Block 1. This moment was absolutely insane. It's become a meme since then. It was one of those moments where, considering that he couldn't say pedophile just a few lines earlier, I am so incredibly surprised that the NFL allowed for him to drop Drake's name like that. It totally threw me by surprise that they were cool with it, and I didn't expect this moment. I mean, there was a lot of speculation if Not Like Us would even be played, and Kendrick plays with that a little bit. He teases that throughout the show as well, like will he, won't he? And there was a moment where I was like, it's not going to happen. despite going into the show being like, for sure he's going to play it. I'm just so surprised that he was able to drop that name. It was crazy. But again, it wasn't about the beef at all, but between this delivery and the inclusion of Williams and SZA, Kendrick is just absolutely diabolical as he just continues to double down on this boogeyman, now you see me, now you don't persona, making just an incredibly impressive case that maybe sometimes it is okay to, in fact, choose violence. As for Kendrick's actual performance, he did the set without a backing track, a rarity for a rapper, but something that you should expect from Kendrick, having seen him on the Mr. Morale tour. He does not use a vocal backing track, which is fantastic. It just creates a much more live energy and much more of a spectacle to his performance. His presence remains incredibly commanding amid a performance carefully orchestrated to create a series of memorable moments. Moments like the Say Drake with the full smile. Just these different moments, these different scenes, they were carefully crafted. His use of set pieces, largely through the different corners and shapes on the stage, but also the choreography to create a series of images surrounding him. It just makes every track pop visually, making it so much more memorable. This, however, was not a Super Bowl designed only for the entertainment of the audience. As you guessed, there are significant layers to a far greater message. Through the later half of 2024, Kendrick masterfully pivoted from his feud with Drake to express a greater narrative, calling for unity among the culture. What was initially a subtle thread that remained present through songs like Euphoria and Not Like Us had grown into a life of its own through the pop-out concert and the Not Like Us music video. In Watch the Party Die, he introduced a new foil to this message, a side of the genre run by predatory figures who manipulate the industry in pursuits of hedonistic desires and profit at the expense of the culture itself. This is manifested through GNX, an album that could not exist without the context of emerging from the beef, but really is about this new burgeoning narrative. By only using the imagery of figures like Drake and Diddy, I say imagery because none of them are referenced by name, Kendrick seeks to unite the culture against a toxic industry that benefits from further oppressing the culture rather than elevating it in a Noah's Ark-inspired tale of a new world awaiting for those who will weather the storm. In traditional fashion, Kendrick also ties this into his own personal journey, where the album can also be seen as his atonement or his reflection for his part in the beef as he seeks personal redemption to do better by his community. All in all, the album represents social, cultural, and personal reincarnation, and we could see the Super Bowl halftime show as a further exploration of these ideas on an institutional level while celebrating Black culture through a politically empowering visual story. Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance personified Black culture amid systemically oppressive expectations from economic and political institutions of white America. This was a criticism of American perceptions and expectations of Black art and commercialism, while making the statement that hip-hop, in its truest form, can be enjoyed but is never supposed to be truly accepted by the mainstream the way that pop music is. This context is first introduced in Jackson's opening line, "Welcome to the great American game." Of course, this is in reference to football, a sport largely enjoyed mostly by Americans. However, there is much more to it. In this sense, the game is in fact society from the perspective of the white upper class. Such post-colonial frameworks are by default white, with the expectation that outside cultures find a way to exist within the predetermined structure. This is further emphasized after Kendrick performs Bodies into Squabble Up. Jackson interrupts. No, 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 no. Too loud, too reckless, too ghetto. Mr. Lamar, do you really know how to play the game? Then tighten up. This is one of the most important lines for understanding the thematic messages of the performance. Too ghetto, of course, translates to too black. The use of language is important for understanding the subversive nature that racism often takes when targeting an outside voice within the accepted framework. Too ghetto is used as a criticism, a complaint, a problem. To be too ghetto is to embrace the norms, values, stylings of black culture in a way that defies white social expectations. Through such criticisms, generations of black Americans have felt the need to quietly express their culture or to do so within the safety of their own homes and communities as not to draw fire for being simply who they are, black Americans. In such, black culture has been weaponized against black people through the normalization of such subversive racism. This is further complicated through the use of a black Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam stands as a symbol of the American dream, a figure that has been used to personify hope and patriotism. The use of Samuel L. Jackson in this role is highly intentional, as it demonstrates the erasure of black culture. As Jackson criticizes Kendrick for expressing his black identity, we see the emergence of cultural suppression from someone of political influence. In this role, Jackson represents the idea that in order for African Americans to achieve social economic movement, they must fully embrace the ideas, values, languages, and perspectives of white America, ultimately fulfilling the goals of colonial racism. By condemning black culture, Jackson plays the role of the antithesis to Kendrick. This line from Jackson is used to transition to Humble, with Kendrick at the center of his dancers as they make up the American flag. Visually and musically, there is much to unpack here. For starters, the flag is divided in half, with Kendrick in the middle, demonstrating a division in culture. This can be seen as a divide between black and white America, between the right and the left, or between the people and Trump. Furthermore, the use of solid blocking in the colors of the outfits, solid red, blue, or white, perhaps being a statement, when compounded with the division of the stage, on the disproportionate amount of black men incarcerated, which of course challenges the over-policing of black communities through legislation such as the War on Drugs, which by design was implemented as a means of legally and economically oppressing predominantly black neighborhoods in an attempt to further disenfranchise them just a little more than a century after slavery was abolished. The history of the War on Drugs is incredibly compelling, one that is often lost in all of the noise, and if this notion interests you, I would highly recommend reading Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. Additionally, the use of black bodies on the flag could suggest that much of the country was built on the backs of black labor, and that white culture has greatly benefited from black culture. All the while, these communities remain further oppressed. Evidence of this, without going too much into the history of it all, popular music has its roots, if you go far back enough, in post-emancipation blues and the emergence of the Black Baptist Church. This is popular music of all genres. The flag dissipates as Kendrick goes into DNA and into Euphoria, and then completing this section with an a cappella barbershop quartet-inspired arrangement of Man at the Garden. For this one, Kendrick raps the final verse of the track surrounded by a chorus of singers gathered under a dimly lit streetlight. Musically, this section is also unique as it follows Jackson's criticisms of being loud, reckless, and ghetto. In response, Kendrick has 4 songs, 3 of which are arguably equally as loud and aggressive in tone. Humble starts the section, and despite its tone, though, it remains Kendrick's biggest hit. Even more so post-Super Bowl. Humble stands as the exception, the idea that black culture can in fact enter the consciousness of the mainstream and find success without pandering or being diluted. Despite overtly being a statement of black culture, by being accepted by American culture, there is a desire by the institutions to whitewash it as less black. This is Kendrick attempting to play the game his way, but play the game regardless. Humble is used as a Trojan horse to sneak in more music, with each song being less of a hit than the previous, but in doing so, he is equating the statements made on Humble as being as much of black culture as the subsequent songs, DNA, Euphoria, and Man at the Garden. Most interesting is his inclusion of a barbershop arrangement for the final track, almost showcasing the roots of being from southern black communities in the late 1800s and early 1900s. By drawing parallels to a much larger lineage, Kendrick is demonstrating that rap music is an extension of a far greater African American history and should be treated as such. Jackson takes note of this, referring to it as the old culture cheat code, and calls on the scorekeeper to deduct one life, reaffirming the metaphor of the game. You can make the argument that Man at the Garden, given its thematic significance on GNX, as a sobering moment of clarity to one's own power and self-worth as a means of leading change within their community. Its placement at the end of this section marks a turning point where Kendrick recognizes that despite attempting to sneak these songs in under the guise of humble, he no longer wishes to play the game as the rules are written. This is a powerful idea that also connects to a greater lineage. Often throughout history, in order for black artists to have crossover success, that is, success that goes beyond the genre charts of the Billboard rap chart and the Billboard R&B chart onto the Billboard chart, have often been criticized by their community for exchanging elements of black music to appeal to more of a white audience. Think of it as these accusations as the cultural version of selling out. Michael Jackson faces criticism for the sleek production in place of dirty funk on Thriller. Prince was criticized for embracing a stadium rock tone on Purple Rain, something he'd respond to with the heavy influence of funk, R&B, and jazz on Sign of the Times. And Whitney Houston's entire career saw her trying to connect and appeal more to black audiences following her seemingly overnight success. Crossover success, especially the kind of success that sees them revolutionize pop music, for a black artist is almost always linked to this discourse, and while problematic, it begs a greater question about how the industry chooses to promote certain artists and who they choose to promote certain artists to. Through his performance, Kendrick is making the claim that there is room for authentic black art within popular culture, almost encouraging others to follow suit. After teasing Not Like Us, Kendrick brings out SZA for a pair of ballads, effectively drawing out the suspense as to if he will actually be able to perform the diss track. Following SZA's section, Jackson returns, enthused, claiming, "That's what I'm talking about, that's what America wants, nice, calm." He's interrupted by the opening sample for Not Like Us, walking away after showing his disapproval on his face. To this, Kendrick responds, rapping, "It's a cultural divide, I'ma get it on the floor. 40 acres and a mule, this is bigger than the music. They tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence." This echoes the message from GNX, the call for elevating the culture in spite of those who profit on pushing it down, while highlighting the division demonstrated through the flag earlier. 40 Acres and a Mule was a post-emancipation promise that freed slaves would be entitled to a home built on 40 acres and would be given a mule to start their lives. A promise that was rescinded following a brief period of Reconstruction after the Civil War. By bringing this up, Kendrick highlights that the American dream is often not extended or fulfilled to people of color. Human rights in America, then and now, have always been followed by an asterisk, as systemic racism has allowed for legislative, political, and economic policies to separate and oppress black achievement and opportunity. As Not Like Us plays, an aerial shot sees a majority of those who previously made up the flag drop to the ground, resembling chalk outlines, echoing sentiments of violence against black communities, particularly that from police officers and the social institutions designed to protect society. It's such a bold move to paraphrase the ideas introduced by Colin Kaepernick on this stage. Interestingly, some of the bodies are sprawled in a manner to resemble swastikas. Given recent inaugurations and the political tone of the time, it is interesting to see the flag dissolve into a shape associated with hatred, fascism, and genocide. As the bodies hit the floor, however, 10, all dressed in white, remain standing in a circle dancing to the song, perhaps referring to the idea of the social elite being above the law, or looking at how a vast majority of power, both political and economical, resides in the vast minority. Or, once again, in reference to recent events, this suggests the existence of an oligarchy backing the current administration. Whatever these mean, it is exceptional that this was also the first Super Bowl in the franchise's history that a president has come to watch live. And I'm certain he had a terrible time. In 13 minutes, through such vivid visual storytelling and effective use of symbolism, we return to the opening line from Jackson. Welcome to the great American game. Here we see that the game, while playing off the setting of the Super Bowl and the PlayStation imagery, is in fact a metaphor for society that highlights how the elite, through a dominating systemic colonial culture, exploit racialized and vulnerable communities for their own profit and pleasure. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, the Super Bowl halftime show has much more to do with the themes found on GNX than one might have thought. With this, we can see Jackson as a figure of power who seeks to moderate, control, and oppress black art in an attempt to ensure the integrity of the colonial system in place. There is, of course, a duality to this message, a second theory that, rather than contradict the former, works in conjunction to better demonstrate the ideas of systemic control. Rather than look at the game as society, we can see it as the music industry, an industry where a select few executives have the ability to make or break careers, choose which voices are heard, and profit excessively not only off the work of artists below them, but also generations of culture that they've built an empire atop. Popular music, rock, pop, R&B, hip-hop, as stated before, has its roots almost entirely out of the post-emancipation blues and the burgeoning black church, making it largely an American export. In this sense, popular music can be the great American game that Jackson is referring to. Through this lens, when Jackson asks Mr. Lamar, "Do you really know how to play the game?" it is almost rhetorical. Of course Kendrick knows how to play the game. He's made it to the Super Bowl. That being said, Kendrick has a history of playing the game his own way, in that he often disrupts traditional cycles of marketing, promotion, and releases. His social media presence is next to nothing. He regularly releases singles ahead of an album only for those songs not to appear on the album. The last year alone is a prime example, with two songs, 616 in LA and Watch the Party Die, having only been released through his Instagram, harkening back to mixtape culture, songs destined to be lost and searched for at a later date. The music video for Not Like Us opened with a verse that would later appear on Squabble Up, and GNX, in addition to being a surprise drop in every sense of the word, was preceded 20 minutes prior to its release with a trailer featuring a still unreleased audio track, a track that the world has now heard an extended cut on as Kendrick opened arguably the biggest performance of his life. A performance devoid of classic cuts and surefire hits in place of a set largely comprised of his newest material. All of these go against the norms and choices an artist should make. On paper, these ideas are risky. They can sink a career or ensure that an album is lost, even among its most dedicated fan base. And yet, Kendrick Lamar remains one of the biggest artists in the world, an artist who continues to revolutionize the genre of rap, an artist who continues to challenge the mainstream, an artist who is able to dictate how culture should be perceived and the transitions that culture should make. In many ways, if the great American game is popular music, we can see that Kendrick regularly circumvents the game. It is such a duality of personal reflection and social commentary that has become normal for Kendrick at this point, as best seen through albums like GNX, Good Kid, Mad City, and To Pimp a Butterfly, making this performance feel like a true point of culmination that his body of creative work has been building towards in the last 15 years. In the days since the performance, despite being the most watched Super Bowl performance and the second most viewed live television broadcast in the history of the world, the reception has drawn much controversy. Some of this stems from the still fresh battle lines from last year's beef. Some of this has appeared overtly racist, and much of this, I would say the most of this, has appeared to be inadvertently racist. People using language that they do not necessarily realize is steeped in a greater legacy of cultural suppression. Despite this, the numbers, while not a demonstration of quality but rather cultural influence, are hard to deny. In addition to the 133.5 million who tuned in live, the NFL's upload to YouTube has achieved more views than Usher's 2024 performance had in a year in under a day. And at the time of writing and recording, has been viewed by over 65 million people and was the trending #1 video on YouTube in over 25 different countries. In addition to his bell bottoms selling out, the Delon Sanders Nike Air DT Max 96 saw a 413% bump in sales. On Spotify, Kendrick saw a 175% increase in American streams within the first 24 hours, with Not Like Us and Humble seeing a 430 and 300% respective increase. The smallest increases to his discography were Luther and TV Off, which both grew roughly 170%. In addition to massive gains on Spotify, Humble has now become the first rap song to be certified as a double diamond, having reached 20 million units. Not streams, but units. A unit is equivalent to 1 album sale, 10 downloads, or 1,500 streams. In the days that followed, Kendrick has become the first rapper to ever surpass 90 million monthly listeners on Spotify, breaking his own record. Kendrick remains the most streamed rapper on Spotify with 98.7 million monthly listeners to Drake's 77.4 million listeners. These are totals calculated on Sunday, February 16th, 1 week after the Super Bowl and 2 days after Drake's newest release. Finally, and most importantly, post-Super Bowl performance, the phrase 40 acres and a mule saw a 430% spike on Google. The influence is tangible. On the biggest stage in the world, Kendrick was sparking a debate among the American people. Early in his performance, Kendrick declares, "The revolution about to be televised, you picked the right time but the wrong guy." This performance, while serving as an explicit extension of the subversive thematic text of GNX, can only really exist in the post-Kaepernick era of the NFL. In 2019, following Kaepernick's departure and slowly declining viewership, the NFL entered into a partnership with Jay-Z, which has resulted in the promotion of more contemporary voices. Jay-Z has used the opportunity to celebrate an array of black voices, shining a light towards a culture that has been neglected and oppressed. There is value in celebration. There is value in normalizing what has been attacked and ignored. However, this does not right the wrongs of an incredibly powerful social institution. The NFL benefits greatly from Jay-Z's involvement and choices through increasing numbers and the appearance that they care about equality. Whether they do or not does not change the fact that they are benefiting from black culture and that Jay-Z has become the organization's token black friend to deflect claims of racism. Celebration has its place. It is incredibly valuable and we cannot deny the power of representation, especially on such a stage. But in these times, celebration can often fall short when a statement is necessary. Kendrick Lamar's performance was a challenge. A shot fired at the oppressors with the aim of sparking a conversation among the people. Kendrick has spent his career exploring the inequalities of the American system while pushing for equal citizenship, dignity, and survival of African Americans within such a system. His performance at the Super Bowl draws its power from occurring center stage on the biggest night for a corporation that, for crisis management, called on Jay-Z to divert claims that the NFL as an organization amplifies racism and systemic oppression. It's not just what Kendrick is saying, it's where he's saying it. To call out America while holding court in this setting was poignant, it was compelling, it was impressively powerful. The revolution was televised, and given American politics, you could argue that there is no better time than now. But the NFL did in fact choose the wrong guy. Perhaps Jay-Z was privy to this, knowing that after years of playing it safe, booking Kendrick would lead to a performance that explicitly, on the surface, towed the conservative line of the NFL, but in the subversive, would challenge what they and their audience stands for. It is because of these values that much of Kendrick's messages rests within the visual storytelling of his performance. This was performance art. I've seen comparisons online to Shakespeare's use of satire, to Picasso's Guernica, and how it was boldly painted to condemn the regime of Francisco Franco, and to Nina Simone's performance of Mississippi Goddamn. This was performance art. Entertaining? Yes, absolutely. But that was merely a side effect to witnessing a prolific rapper, whereas the performance was a statement that by design was meant to highlight uncomfortable truths that exist in all post-colonial societies. If this conversation feels uncomfortable, then it worked. It is within such a message where the celebration lies. While being criticized for being too ghetto, Kendrick doubles down, reclaiming the need to highlight authentic voices, not only to celebrate those that can fit in, but make room for all authentic art. Serena crip walking in a tennis skirt is a reclamation of culture after being criticized for doing the same on court after winning in 2012 in Wimbledon. The fact that Jackson attempts to suppress hip-hop demonstrates that rap music exists as a means of resistance that can be used to circumvent a system that oppresses Black and marginalized communities. In this, Kendrick highlights that hip-hop, authentic hip-hop, by the very nature of its existence, and despite its mainstream appeal within the last 2 decades, is designed to antagonize the system as an artistic form of expression for the oppressed. Real hip-hop should make America uncomfortable. Top Dog Entertainment's Punch perhaps said it best. Seeing all the commentary surrounding the Super Bowl performance, it's showing that we lost sight of what we've always fought for to be who we are as artists of hip-hop culture. Since when did we want to fit in with the mainstream? Sure, we want the mainstream platforms, but only to do us, authentically us. That's what always made hip-hop so appealing. The show ends with Game Over illuminated within the stands. The message is clear. It was televised by a radically authentic Black voice, a truly one-of-a-kind artist. Hip-hop, like art, is far more than entertainment, but a vehicle for us to reflect our world on a personal and societal level in a creative manner. Through this, we can experience a full spectrum of humanity, a grand range of human existence. In such cases, it can be a means of instigating change, for elevating communities, and for attacking those who seek to silence, suppress, and police Black voices as a tool for reflection and discomfort. This is culture. And on February 9th, 2025, Kendrick Lamar made history, reminding the world that hip-hop is art. Thank you for joining me for episode 40 of Beats by Jer, and be sure to tune in 2 weeks for an all-new episode. And don't forget to follow me at Beats by Jer on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, and Facebook. I'm Jared Harris, and this is Beats by Jer.